Some men don't break when they lose love. They break when they realize what they threw away. Lee Sung-ho was untouchable. The kind of man who inherited blood empires and wore them like fine silk. 15 months ago, he'd chosen power over the one person who made him believe he could be something other than his father's shadow. He'd walked away from Sharon Williams without looking back, convinced that men like him didn't get to keep soft things. 15 months of silence. 15 months of building an empire on the bones of what he'd sacrificed. And then he sees her. Incheon International Airport, Gate 47. She's wearing red, like a wound that never healed, and in her arms, a baby boy with eyes that mirror his own. His fiancée stands beside him, diamond glinting, honeymoon plans still warm on her phone. The wedding is in 3 days. The merger that will make him unstoppable is already signed. But the child staring back at him just shattered every lie he's built. This is the story of the mafia boss who thought he could outrun his past, and the systems architect who learned to survive without him. It's about the son he never knew existed, and the 8 secrets that will tear his entire world apart. Welcome to Ruthless Romance Tales. And honey, you just stepped into something you can't unsee. If you've been riding with me, you know we don't do safe here, we do dangerous, we do addictive, we do the kind of love that brands your soul and refuses to let go. And if you're new, buckle the hell up, because what you're about to witness is a collision so violent, so inevitable, it'll rewrite everything you thought you knew about romance. Hit that like button like your life depends on it. Subscribe because you're already hooked. And smash that notification bell, because missing what comes next would be a crime. Now let's watch how the mafia boss's life changes forever. The airport tasted like recycled air and other people's goodbyes. Lee Sung-ho moved through the VIP terminal with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. At 32, he'd perfected the art of presence. People stepped aside before he asked. Security nodded without checking credentials. Even the lighting seemed to bend around him, catching the dark ink that crawled up his neck and disappeared beneath his collar. A reminder that he'd earned his position in ways polite society pretended not to understand. His fiancée, Min-ah, walked 3 steps behind in emerald silk, her phone pressed to her ear, finalizing details for a wedding that would unite 2 of Seoul's most powerful families. She was beautiful in the way expensive things were beautiful. Flawless. Cold. Exactly what his position required. The diamond on her finger caught the overhead lights as she laughed at something her wedding planner said. And Sung-ho felt nothing. He'd stopped expecting to feel anything 8 months ago when he'd finally agreed to this arrangement. Everything was choreographed. The flight to Santorini, the private villa, the carefully orchestrated union that would cement his control over the eastern ports. His father had died 18 months ago, leaving him an empire that demanded he become someone harder, someone colder. And in 72 hours, he'd have everything a man in his position could want. Then the doors to Gate 47 opened, and his heart stopped. She stood framed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, the late afternoon sun turning her into a silhouette he'd spent 15 months trying to forget. Sharon Williams. Her name hit him like a physical blow, stealing the air from his lungs. She wore red, deep crimson, that made her dark skin glow like warm amber, and for a moment, time folded in on itself. He was back in her apartment. The morning everything changed. His father's death, the emergency call, the choice he'd had to make. He'd kissed her forehead that last morning, whispered promises he'd known were lies even as he'd made them, left before she could wake up and see the coward he really was. But Sharon wasn't looking at him. She was looking down, adjusting the blanket wrapped around the infant in her arms. Sung-ho's vision narrowed. The airport noise faded to white static. His carefully constructed world tilted on its axis. The baby turned its head, and Sung-ho saw his own face staring back at him. Same dark eyes, serious even in infancy. Same exact shape to the brow. The same expression he'd seen in his childhood photographs, the ones his mother had burned after his father's funeral. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't his imagination. This was biological certainty wrapped in a soft blue blanket. His hand released Min-ah's arm. He didn't remember deciding to let go. His feet carried him forward, autopilot overriding every survival instinct that screamed at him to turn around, to pretend he hadn't seen, to protect the life he'd built on the grave of what he'd destroyed. 10 feet. 5. Min-ah's voice cut through the fog, sharp and confused. Sung-ho, what are you doing? He didn't answer. Couldn't. Every word he'd ever learned had evaporated. Sharon must have felt his approach because she turned. Their eyes met across 3 feet of space that might as well have been the ocean he'd put between them 15 months ago. Her face was different. The softness he remembered had been replaced by something sharper, something that had learned to survive without him. But it was still her, still the woman who'd made him believe. for 6 beautiful months, that he could be more than his father's son. She didn't look surprised. She looked tired. Sharon. His voice came out wrecked, barely above a whisper. Sung-ho. She said his name like it was a fact. No emotion, no inflection, just acknowledgement. The baby made a soft sound, and Sung-ho's gaze dropped back to the child. His son. The word settled into his chest like a blade. How old? 6 months. Sharon shifted the baby's weight, and Sung-ho noticed the way she angled her body, instinctively protective. His name is Elias. 6 months. The math crashed into him like a freight train. She'd been pregnant when he left. She'd known. Or maybe she'd found out days after, weeks after, alone in that apartment while he'd been drowning himself in his father's empire. He'd missed the birth. The first smile, the first time those eyes had opened and looked at the world. 6 months of his son's life. Gone. Because he'd been too much of a coward to choose love over legacy. Behind him, Minna's heels clicked closer. Who is this? Her voice carried the kind of edge that came from a lifetime of getting exactly what she wanted. Sharon's eyes flicked past Sung-ho to his fiancée, taking in the emerald dress, the diamond, the possessive way Minna's hand reached for his arm. Something flickered across Sharon's face. Not jealousy. Something colder. Recognition. No one important, Sharon said, but she was looking at Sung-ho when she said it. Just someone he used to know. The words hit harder than any accusation could have. Used to know. Past tense. As if 15 months had erased everything they'd been to each other. As if the child in her arms hadn't been created from nights when he'd believed, for just a moment, that he could be more than blood and violence. Sharon, wait. Congratulations on your engagement. She cut him off, her voice perfectly level. I saw the announcement. Very strategic match. She adjusted Elias again, and Sung-ho caught a glimpse of a boarding pass tucked into her purse. Jeju Island. One way. We need to board. You can't just... His hand reached out instinctively, but he stopped himself before touching her. He wasn't sure he had that right anymore. I can, actually. Sharon's eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw something beyond the exhaustion. Something that looked like carefully controlled rage. I've been doing everything without you for 15 months, Sung-ho. I got very good at it. She walked past him, carrying his son toward the gate, and Sung-ho stood frozen, watching the two most important people in his life disappear into a crowd of strangers. Minna's hand tightened on his arm, her nails digging in through his jacket. Who was that? Sung-ho couldn't answer. Couldn't think. Behind him, he heard Minna's phone ring, heard her step away to answer it, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. But none of it mattered. Nothing mattered except the red dress vanishing through the gate and the child who had his eyes. He'd spent 15 months building an empire. And in 30 seconds, he'd discovered he'd built it on the wrong foundation. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Someone's suitcase wheel squeaked past. The gate agent called for final boarding. And Lee Sung-ho, the man who controlled half of Seoul's underground, stood paralyzed in the middle of an airport, finally understanding what it meant to lose. Minna returned to his side, her expression unreadable. Her phone was still in her hand, screen glowing. We need to leave. Now. I need to talk to her. No. Minna's voice was flat. You need to get in the car, go home, and forget you saw anything. Sung-ho looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something in her eyes that made his instincts scream. What did you just do? Minna smiled, and it didn't reach her eyes. I called my father. He's very interested in meeting the woman who could ruin our merger. She glanced toward the now empty gate, then back at him. Jeju Island is small, Sung-ho. Very easy to find someone there. The threat hung in the air between them, unspoken but crystal clear. Sung-ho's jaw tightened. If you touch her, you'll what? Minna's smile widened. Choose her over your empire? Over everything your father built? Over everything you've become? She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. We both know you already made that choice 15 months ago. Don't pretend you're a different man now. The words were poison, but they were also truth. He had chosen. He'd walked away, and now Sharon was walking away from him, taking his son to an island Minna's family could reach with a single phone call. The overhead speakers crackled. Final boarding for Jeju. Last call. Sung-ho's hands curled into fists at his sides. He had 72 hours until the wedding. 72 hours until the merger was finalized and Minna's family became untouchable. 72 hours to figure out how to protect the woman he'd abandoned and the son he'd never known existed. The gate door closed with a hollow thud, and Sung-ho realized, with the kind of clarity that only came from absolute catastrophe, that the next 3 days would determine whether he spent the rest of his life as a king or as a father. He couldn't be both. Not anymore. The car ride back to his penthouse was suffocating. Minna sat beside him in silence, her phone dark now, resting in her lap like a loaded weapon. Lieutenant Jin drove, his eyes occasionally flicking to the rearview mirror, watching Sung-ho with the kind of concern reserved for men who looked like they were about to shatter. Sung-ho stared out the window, watching Seoul blur past. Neon signs, street vendors, couples walking hand in hand, normal people living normal lives. None of them knew they were driving past a man who'd just had his entire world rewritten in 30 seconds. Elias. The name echoed in his skull. His son, 6 months old. 6 months of existence that Sung-ho had missed because he'd been too busy becoming the man his father had demanded he be. Too busy consolidating power, eliminating rivals, building an empire on the foundation of everything he'd sacrificed, including her. Sharon's face haunted him. Not the soft, smiling woman he remembered from 15 months ago, but the harder version he'd just seen. The one who'd looked at him with exhaustion instead of love. The one who'd called him someone she used to know, like he was a stranger instead of the man who'd held her through nightmares, who'd laughed at her terrible cooking, who'd promised her forever and then disappeared before sunrise. You're thinking about her. Minna's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp and clinical. Sung-ho didn't answer. Understandable, she continued, examining her nails like they were discussing the weather. Finding out you have a child is shocking. But it doesn't change anything, Sung-ho. The wedding is still happening. My father has already transferred half the merger funds. Backing out now would be financial suicide. Possibly literal suicide, depending on how insulted he feels. Sung-ho turned to look at her. Really look at her. They'd been engaged for 4 months, a business arrangement brokered by their families. She was intelligent, beautiful, connected to every power player in Seoul. On paper, she was perfect. In reality, she was a stranger wearing an engagement ring. You threatened my son, he said quietly. I stated facts. Minna's expression didn't change. Jeju is a small island. People are easy to find there. I'm simply pointing out that your indiscretion is now vulnerable in a way she wasn't when she was anonymous in Seoul. She has a name. I don't care about her name. Minna finally looked at him, and her eyes were cold calculation. I care about protecting my family's investment. You're that investment, Sung-ho. And right now you're compromised. The car pulled up to his building. 43 floors of glass and steel that touched the sky. His kingdom. His cage. Jin opened the door, but Sung-ho didn't move. I need to think, he said. Minna placed her hand on his arm. Her touch was ice. Think all you want, but remember who holds the power here. My father controls the ports. Your empire depends on those ports. One word from him, and everything you've built collapses. She leaned closer, her breath cold against his ear. Choose wisely, Sung-ho. Some mistakes can be managed. Others need to disappear. She stepped out of the car, her heels clicking against the pavement like a countdown. Jin waited, holding the door, his expression carefully neutral. Sung-ho sat in the back seat, his hands clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. 15 months ago, he'd walked away from Sharon because he'd believed he had no choice. His father had just died. The organization was fracturing. Rivals were circling. He'd needed to become someone harder, someone capable of holding his father's empire together through sheer will and violence. He'd succeeded. In 15 months, he'd crushed 3 rival families, expanded into new territories, and positioned himself as one of the most powerful men in Seoul's underworld. He'd become exactly what his father had wanted him to be. And in doing so, he'd lost everything that mattered. Sung-ho finally stepped out of the car. The night air was cold, but it didn't touch the ice spreading through his chest. Jin fell into step beside him, silent but present. They rode the elevator to the penthouse in silence. The doors opened onto gleaming floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. His city. Every light down there represented someone who feared him, respected him, or owed him. He'd built this empire on blood and sacrifice, but he'd never intended to sacrifice his own blood. Boss, Jin said quietly, the first words he'd spoken since the airport. What do you need? Sung-ho walked to the window, staring out at Seoul's glittering skyline. Somewhere down there, in some office building or safe house, Minna's father was already making plans. Plans that involved Sharon, plans that involved Elias, plans that involved making problems disappear. I need you to find someone, Sung-ho said. Quietly. No one can know, especially not Minna's people. Jin pulled out his phone, ready. Who? Sharon Williams. She's flying to Jeju tonight. I need to know where she's staying, who she's with, and every move she makes. Sung-ho turned to face his lieutenant. And I need to know before Minna's father finds her first. Jin nodded once, already typing. Consider it done. Sung-ho's phone buzzed. A text from Minna. Dinner tomorrow, my parents want to meet you. 7 p.m. Don't be late. Another buzz. This time, an unknown number. Sung-ho opened it, and his blood went cold. It was a photo. Sharon standing in an airport, Elias in her arms. The angle was wrong, too distant. Someone had been watching her, following her, and they wanted Sung-ho to know it. No message, just the photo. Sung-ho's hands shook. Rage and fear mixed into something toxic that burned through his veins. He'd spent 15 months becoming someone untouchable, someone feared, but fear was useless when the people he cared about were the ones being threatened. Change of plans, he said, his voice deadly calm. I need a flight to Jeju, tonight, and I need it off the books. Jin looked up from his phone. Boss, if you disappear right now, Minna's family will know something's wrong. I don't care. They'll move faster. If they think you're protecting her, then I need to get there first. Sung-ho grabbed his jacket, his mind already racing through possibilities. How long to arrange the flight? 2 hours? Maybe less. Do it. Sung-ho headed for the door, then stopped. And Jin? If anyone asks where I am, you don't know. Understood? Jin's expression was unreadable. Understood. Sung-ho left the penthouse, his heart pounding against his ribs. He'd walked away from Sharon once because he'd believed he had no choice. He'd convinced himself that men like him didn't get to have families, didn't get to have love, didn't get to have anything that made them human. He'd been wrong, and now his son, his blood, was on an island with a target painted on his back because Sung-ho had been too weak to fight for what mattered. Not anymore. The elevator descended, carrying him down from his glass tower toward something that felt dangerously close to hope, or maybe desperation. He couldn't tell the difference anymore. His phone buzzed again. Another photo. This time, it was Sharon boarding the plane, Elias's tiny hand visible against her shoulder. The message that followed made his blood turn to ice. She looks tired. Traveling alone with a baby must be exhausting. Accidents happen so easily when you're tired. No signature. No name. Just the threat, clear and unmistakable. Sung-ho's jaw clenched. He typed back a single message. Touch her, and I burn everything. The response came immediately. You already burned everything 15 months ago. Now you're just counting the ashes. The elevator doors opened onto the parking garage. Sung-ho's car waited, sleek and black and fast enough to outrun everything except his past. He got behind the wheel, engine roaring to life. The airport was 30 minutes away. The flight to Jeju was an hour. Every second counted. Because somewhere on that island, Sharon Williams was arriving with his son, completely unaware that the man she'd loved and the man she'd left were both hunting her. One to save her, one to destroy her. And Sung-ho had 72 hours to figure out which version of himself would reach her first. The plane touched down on Jeju at 11:43 p.m. Sharon felt Elias stir against her chest, his small body warm and heavy in the carrier. He'd slept through the entire flight. Thank God. She hadn't. Every sound had made her jump. Every passenger who'd walked past their seats had made her pulse spike. Every announcement had felt like a countdown to something terrible. She was being paranoid. She knew that. Sung-ho didn't know where she was going, didn't know she'd taken this flight, didn't know anything except that she'd walked away from him at gate 47 with his son in her arms and hadn't looked back. Except she had looked back. Once. Just before boarding. And the expression on his face had nearly destroyed her resolve. Sharon shook her head, forcing the memory away. She couldn't afford to think about Sung-ho's face. Couldn't afford to remember the way his voice had cracked when he'd said her name. Couldn't afford to wonder if the shock in his eyes had been real or just another manipulation from a man who'd already proven he was very good at lying. The airport was nearly empty at this hour. Sharon collected her single suitcase from baggage claim, adjusted Elias in the carrier, and headed for the exit. The rental car company had promised a vehicle would be waiting. Something small and inconspicuous. The kind of car that didn't draw attention. The kind of car that helped people disappear. Outside, the night air was cooler than Seoul, carrying the salt smell of the ocean. Sharon found her rental, loaded her suitcase, and carefully transferred Elias to his car seat. He whimpered but didn't wake. 6 months old, and he'd already learned to sleep through chaos. Just like his mother, Sharon slid behind the wheel and pulled up the GPS. The address she'd memorized glowed on the screen. A small house on the eastern coast, away from the tourist areas, isolated, private, safe. Or at least, that's what she'd told herself when she'd rented it 3 weeks ago, back when finding Sung-ho again had seemed like an impossibility rather than an inevitability. The drive took 40 minutes. Dark roads, scattered streetlights, the occasional house with warm windows. Normal people living normal lives. Sharon envied them. They probably didn't have to run, probably didn't have secrets that could get them killed, probably didn't have the father of their child engaged to a woman whose family made people disappear. She'd done her research on Minna's family, the Kangs. They weren't just wealthy. They were connected to every shadow in Seoul. Money laundering, political corruption, and rumors of worse things that no one dared speak about out loud. And Minna's father, Kang Jae-sung, was the spider at the center of that web. Sharon's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She'd known going to that airport was dangerous, known that seeing Sung-ho again could trigger consequences she wasn't prepared for, but she'd needed him to know, needed him to see what he'd left behind, needed him to understand that she hadn't just disappeared, she'd survived. And now Elias would grow up knowing his father's face, even if his father never deserved to know his. The GPS announced her destination. Sharon pulled into a gravel driveway. The house was exactly as advertised. Small, white, surrounded by trees. The ocean whispered somewhere in the darkness beyond. She could hear waves crashing against rocks. She unloaded the car quickly, carrying Elias inside first, then returning for the suitcase. The house smelled like wood and sea salt. Clean, empty, safe. Sharon locked the door behind her. Triple-checked it, then checked the windows. All secure. She was being paranoid again. Elias started crying. Hungry. Sharon settled into the small living room's worn couch and fed him, her mind drifting despite her best efforts. Back to Seoul, back to the airport, back to the moment Sung-ho had looked at his son for the first time and his entire face had gone pale. That hadn't been fake. She knew Sung-ho's tells, knew when he was performing and when he was breaking, and at that airport, he'd been breaking. Good, the bitter part of her whispered. Let him break. Let him feel even a fraction of what she'd felt 15 months ago when she'd woken up alone, pregnant, and abandoned by the only man she'd ever loved. But the softer part of her, the part she tried to bury, wondered if maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe he really hadn't known. Maybe when he'd left that morning, he'd had no idea what he was leaving behind. Elias finished eating and fell back asleep. Sharon carried him to the bedroom, laid him gently in the portable crib she'd set up earlier that week during her preparation trip. She stood there for a long moment, watching his tiny chest rise and fall, his perfect face peaceful in sleep. He looked so much like Sung-ho, it physically hurt. Sharon's phone buzzed. She pulled it from her pocket, expecting spam. Instead, it was an email from an address she didn't recognize. No subject line, just an attachment. She opened it. Her blood turned to ice. It was a photo. Taken tonight, in Seoul. At the airport. The angle was from above, distant, like someone had been watching from the second-floor observation area. In the photo, Sung-ho stood frozen at gate 47, his face pale, his hand reaching toward her, retreating back. But that wasn't what made Sharon's heart stop. In the background, barely visible in the crowd, was a man, Asian, 30s, expensive suit. And he was looking directly at Sharon and Elias with an expression that made her skin crawl. The email pinged again. A message this time, just 2 lines. You have something that belongs to powerful people. Running to islands won't save you. Sharon's hands shook. She deleted the email immediately, then checked every lock in the house again. All secure. But security was an illusion. If someone had her email, they had more. If someone had been watching her at the airport, they knew where she'd gone. She pulled Elias from the crib, held him against her chest, felt his heartbeat against hers, her baby, her son, the only good thing that had come from loving a man who'd left her behind. Sharon walked to the window, peering through the curtains at the dark driveway. Empty, silent, just trees and shadows and the distant sound of waves. But somewhere in that darkness, someone was watching, and they wanted her to know it. Sung-ho's private jet landed on Jeju at 1:17 a.m. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't done anything except stare at his phone, waiting for another threatening message that never came. The silence was worse than the threats. Silence meant planning. Silence meant someone was already moving. Jin met him on the tarmac with a tablet and a grim expression. I found her. She's renting a house on the eastern coast. Remote location. No neighbors within a kilometer. Smart, Sung-ho muttered. Sharon had always been smart. It was one of the things he'd loved about her. one of the many things he'd thrown away. There's a problem. Jin swiped through images on the tablet. Someone else is looking for her too. I tracked 3 separate searches for her name in the past 2 hours, all coming from IP addresses linked to Kang family servers. Sung-ho's jaw clenched. Mina had wasted no time. How long do we have? Hard to say. They're being thorough. Running background checks, pulling flight records, checking rental agreements. My guess? They'll have her location by morning. 6 hours. Maybe less. Sung-ho grabbed the tablet, memorizing the address. Get me a car. Something fast. Already waiting. Jin hesitated. Boss, if you go to her now, you're confirming she matters. Mina will use that against you. She already knows she matters. Sung-ho headed toward the car, a sleek black sedan that looked too expensive for Jeju's quiet roads. The question is whether I get there before her father's people do. And if you do get there first? Jin followed, his voice careful. What then? You haven't seen her in 15 months. She walked away from you at that airport without a second glance. What makes you think she'll even open the door? Sung-ho stopped, his hand on the car door. She won't. But I'm not going there to talk. Then why? I'm going there to watch. Sung-ho slid into the driver's seat. If the Kangs are hunting her, she needs protection. Even if she doesn't want it. Even if she hates me. Jin leaned against the car door, his expression unreadable. You're risking everything for a woman who left you. I left her first, Sung-ho said quietly. And she was carrying my son when I did. He started the engine. I'm not losing them twice. Jin stepped back, nodding once. Call if you need backup. Sung-ho pulled onto the dark road, GPS guiding him toward the eastern coast. The island was beautiful in daylight, all volcanic rock and green hills and ocean views. At night, it felt isolated, vulnerable, the kind of place where people came to hide, or where people came to hunt. His phone buzzed. A text from Mina. Where are you? He ignored it. Another buzz. My father wants to know why you're not answering. Sung-ho typed back. Tell your father I'm handling business. Her response came immediately. What business? You're not in Seoul. His blood went cold. She was tracking him. Of course she was. He'd been naive to think otherwise. Mina's family didn't make billion-dollar mergers without having insurance policies. And right now, Sung-ho was their investment. He pulled over, killed the engine, and dialed Jin. They're tracking my phone. I know. I'm already working on it. Jin's fingers clicked on a keyboard. Give me 2 minutes to reroute your signal through Seoul Towers. Make it 1 minute. Silence. Then, done. Your phone thinks you're at your penthouse. But boss, this won't hold if they have someone physically watching your building. They do. Sung-ho knew how the Kangs operated. How long before they figure out I'm not there? Morning maybe. Depends on how paranoid they're feeling. Not long enough. Sung-ho ended the call and started driving again. Faster this time. The GPS showed 30 minutes to Sharon's house. 30 minutes to get there before someone else did. The roads were empty. No cars. No lights. Just darkness. And the occasional street sign reflecting his headlights. Sung-ho's mind raced through possibilities. Best case scenario. He reached Sharon first, convinced her to leave, got her and Elias somewhere safe before the Kangs located them. Worst case. He arrived to find Kang's people already there. He didn't let himself think about what already there might mean. 20 minutes. The road curved along the coastline now. Ocean to his right, dark and endless. Trees to his left, thick enough to hide anything. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Sung-ho's stomach dropped. He opened the message. Another photo. Sharon's rental house. Taken from the tree line. Lights on in the front window. The angle showed the living room clearly. And in that living room, visible through the glass, was Sharon holding Elias. The message below the photo made his blood boil. Pretty house. Shame about the security. Those locks won't stop anyone determined. Sung-ho's foot slammed on the accelerator. The car surged forward, engine roaring. 15 minutes. He could make it in 10 if he pushed. Another message. Does she know you're coming? Or will you be just another intruder in the night? Sung-ho didn't respond. Didn't slow down. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles went white. The GPS showed 5 minutes. The road narrowed, gravel crunching under his tires. He killed his headlights, relying on moonlight and memory. Sharon's house appeared ahead, a small white structure tucked between trees. Lights still on, no other cars visible, but that didn't mean anything. Professionals didn't park in driveways. Sung-ho stopped the car 50 meters away, hidden by trees. He got out quietly, every sense heightened. The ocean crashed nearby. Wind rustled through leaves. and beneath it all, the sound of his own heartbeat, loud and fast and terrified. He moved through the shadows toward the house, staying low. Through the window, he could see Sharon pacing, Elias against her shoulder. She looked exhausted, frightened. Her phone was in her hand, screen glowing. She'd gotten the messages too. Sung-ho circled the house, checking for signs of intrusion. Nothing, but someone had been here. Recent footprints in the soft earth near the back window. Size 11, maybe 12. Professional boots. And they led away from the house, back into the trees, back toward where Sung-ho had parked his car. His blood turned to ice. He spun around, hand reaching for the gun Jin had given him. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Male, Asian. Expensive suit despite the late hour, and he was smiling like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Lee Sung-ho, the man said quietly. Kang Jae-sung sends his regards. Sung-ho's hand stayed on his weapon, but he didn't draw it. Not yet. The man in front of him was alone, which meant he was either supremely confident or supremely stupid. Men who worked for Kang Jae-sung were rarely stupid. You have a message, Sung-ho said, his voice flat. Deliver it. The man's smile widened. He was younger than Sung-ho had initially thought. Late 20s maybe. Handsome in a way that felt calculated. Everything about him screamed money and privilege. Mr. Kang wants you to know he understands. Young love, old flames, unexpected children. It's very romantic. Get to the point. The point is that romance and business don't mix well. The man pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and held it up. A document glowed in the darkness. Contract terms, financial projections. The merger agreement between Sung-ho's organization and the Kang family. This represents 18 months of negotiation, billions of dollars, political connections that took decades to build. Are you really willing to throw it all away for a woman who clearly wants nothing to do with you? Sung-ho's jaw clenched. She has a name. I'm sure she does. The man pocketed his phone. But names don't matter. What matters is that you're here, on this island, when you should be in Seoul preparing for your wedding. Mr. Kang finds that concerning. Tell Mr. Kang I'm handling personal business. Your personal business is his business now. The moment you signed that contract, your life became part of a larger equation. The man gestured toward Sharon's house. That woman and that child? They're variables that don't fit. Mr. Kang prefers clean mathematics. Sung-ho took a step forward, closing the distance. If you're threatening her, I'm not threatening anyone. The man held up his hands, still smiling. I'm simply explaining reality. Mr. Kang is a businessman. He solves problems efficiently. Right now you have a problem. He's offering to solve it for you. I don't need his help. Don't you? The man's expression shifted, something colder sliding beneath the polished surface. You're engaged to his daughter. The wedding is in 3 days. And yet here you are, standing outside your ex-girlfriend's house in the middle of the night, looking like a man about to make a catastrophic mistake. He paused. Mr. Kang would like to help you avoid that mistake. By doing what exactly? The man shrugged. By making the problem disappear. Quietly, permanently, no mess, no complications. You go back to Seoul, marry Mina, and live the life you've built. Everyone wins. Sung-ho's hand tightened on his weapon. Everyone except Sharon and my son. Collateral damage is unfortunate but sometimes necessary. The man's tone was conversational, like discussing the weather. You know this, Sung-ho. You've made similar decisions in your own business. How many people have you sacrificed to build your empire? What makes these two different? They're mine. The words came out before Sung-ho could stop them. Raw, honest. The kind of honesty he'd spent 15 months burying beneath layers of control and calculation. The man studied him for a long moment. That's what I thought. That's what Mr. Kang thought too. He stepped back, creating distance, which is why he sent me with a different offer. I'm listening. Walk away, now, tonight. Get back on your plane, return to Seoul, and forget you ever saw her at that airport. The man's voice dropped. In exchange, Mr. Kang guarantees her safety. She can stay on this island, raise your son, live whatever small life she wants, untouched, protected, as long as you stay away. Sung-ho's mind raced. It was a trap. Had to be. Men like Kang Jae-sung didn't make promises out of kindness. But the alternative was bringing Sharon and Elias back into his world, into the violence and politics and danger that came with being connected to him. And if I refuse, then Mr. Kang stops offering protection and starts offering solutions. The man's smile vanished entirely. You're a smart man, Sung-ho. You understand how this works. You can have your empire or you can have her. But you can't have both. Not anymore. Sung-ho looked past the man toward Sharon's house. Through the window, he could see her sitting now, Elias asleep on her shoulder. She looked peaceful, safe, everything she wouldn't be if he brought her back into his life. "How do I know he'll keep his word?" Sung-ho asked quietly. "You don't. But you know what happens if you refuse." The man pulled out a business card, held it out. "You have until sunrise to decide. After that, Mr. Kang makes the decision for you." Sung-ho took the card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, just a phone number, nothing else. The man turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I hope you choose wisely. That child deserves a father, even if that father has to love him from a distance." He disappeared into the trees, footsteps fading into the sound of wind and waves. Sung-ho stood alone in the darkness, card burning in his hand like evidence of a deal with the devil. He looked at Sharon's house, at the woman he'd loved, at the son he'd just discovered, at everything he'd thought he wanted 15 months ago before his father's death had forced him to become someone else. Inside the house, a light turned off. Sharon was going to bed, completely unaware that her life had just been bargained over like property, completely unaware that the man she'd once loved was standing 50 meters away, deciding whether to save her or destroy her. Sung-ho pulled out his phone, stared at the number on the card. Sunrise was 4 hours away. 4 hours to choose between the empire he'd built and the family he'd abandoned. 4 hours to decide what kind of man he really was. His phone buzzed. A text from Jin. "Boss, we have a problem. Mina just boarded a private flight to Jeju. ETA, 2 hours. Sung-ho's decision time had just been cut in half, and Mina coming to the island changed everything." Sharon couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every rustle of wind sounded like whispers. She checked the locks 6 times, pulled the curtains closed, positioned herself where she could see both the front door and Elias's crib simultaneously. The email had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. Someone knew where she was. Someone had been watching her in Seoul, and that someone wanted her to know she wasn't safe. She pulled out her laptop, the blue glow illuminating her face in the dark living room. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced speed. Muscle memory from years of work she'd left behind when Elias was born. Systems architecture, network security, digital forensics, skills she'd sworn she'd never use again. But desperate times required desperate measures. Sharon pulled up the email header, started tracing the source. Whoever had sent it had used proxy servers, routing the message through 5 different countries. Professional work, but not perfect work. Everyone made mistakes, even professionals. She cracked the first layer within 10 minutes. Tokyo server. Corporate IP address registered to a holding company she didn't recognize. She dug deeper, following the digital breadcrumbs backward through the network. Second layer. Singapore. Financial server. Encrypted transactions, offshore accounts, getting warmer. Third layer. Seoul. And there it was. The origin point. An IP address she recognized immediately because she'd seen it before, 15 months ago, when she'd been stupid enough to love a man whose world was built on secrets. Lee Sung-ho's private server. Sharon's hands froze on the keyboard. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Sung-ho had sent the email. Sung-ho had the photo of her at the airport. Sung-ho had been threatening her. No, that didn't make sense. She'd seen his face at gate 47. The shock had been real. The devastation had been real. He hadn't known about Elias. She'd stake her life on it, which meant someone else had access to his server. Someone close enough to use his systems. Someone who wanted Sharon to think the threats were coming from him. Mina. The realization hit like ice water. Mina had access to everything Sung-ho owned. As his fiancée, she'd have passwords, security clearances, administrative privileges, and Mina had every reason to want Sharon gone. Sharon's fingers flew across the keyboard again, this time searching for different information. Mina's digital footprint, social media, financial records, anything that might give Sharon leverage. What she found made her blood run cold. Mina wasn't just Kang Jae-sung's daughter. She was his operations technical coordinator. Money laundering, data encryption, digital evidence destruction. Every illegal transaction the Kang family made went through systems Mina personally designed. And 3 weeks ago, Mina had created a new file folder on Sung-ho's server. Title, Contingency Protocol. Sharon clicked it open, her stomach churning. Inside were documents, surveillance photos, background checks, all focused on one person, her. The earliest photo was dated 2 months ago, Sharon leaving her apartment in Seoul. Another from 6 weeks ago, grocery shopping with Elias. Another from 4 weeks ago, meeting with the Jeju rental agent. Mina had been tracking her for months, long before the airport, long before Sung-ho even knew Elias existed. But why? What had triggered Mina's interest? Sharon dug deeper, searching through file metadata, creation dates, edit logs, and there, buried in the code, she found it. A document titled Inheritance Clause, Amended. She opened it. Legal language filled the screen. Dense, complex, but Sharon had learned to read contracts when she'd worked in corporate security. She scanned through the paragraphs, her mind racing. The merger between Sung-ho's organization and the Kang family had a clause. If Sung-ho produced a biological heir before the wedding, the power structure shifted. Instead of Mina's family controlling 60% of the combined empire, Sung-ho would retain majority control. His bloodline would inherit everything, but only if the heir was legitimate, recognized, protected. Sharon's hands started shaking. Elias wasn't just Sung-ho's son. He was a threat to the Kang family's entire plan. They'd spent 18 months negotiating a merger that would give them control of Seoul's underworld. And Sharon's baby boy was the only thing standing between them and total power, which meant they weren't trying to scare her. They were trying to eliminate the problem before Sung-ho could legitimize it. Her phone buzzed. Another email. Same anonymous address. But this time, the message was different. You're smarter than we thought. Cute trick with the trace. But you're still in a house with one exit, on an island with one airport, holding a child worth more dead than alive. Run if you want. We'll find you. Stay and wait. We'll find you. Either way, sunrise changes everything. Attached was a live feed. Security camera footage. Except it wasn't from her house. It was from outside her house. Night vision. Real time. Showing her rental car in the driveway. Showing her front door. Showing the exact position of every window. Someone was watching her right now. Sharon closed the laptop, her breath coming in short gasps. She moved to the window, peering through a crack in the curtains. The driveway looked empty. The trees were just shadows. Nothing moved. But the camera feed didn't lie. Someone was out there. She pulled Elias from his crib, held him close. His warm weight against her chest was the only thing keeping her from complete panic. She needed to think, needed a plan, needed. Glass shattered, not from a window. From her laptop screen, Sharon spun around. The laptop sat on the coffee table where she'd left it, but the screen was spiderwebbed with cracks, destroyed from the inside. Smoke curled from the keyboard. A remote kill switch. Someone had just fried her computer to destroy the evidence she'd found, which meant they knew she'd been digging, knew she'd found the inheritance clause, knew she understood why Elias was a target. Sharon grabbed her phone, her keys, Elias's diaper bag. She had to move, had to run. Staying in this house was suicide. She reached for the front door, then froze. Someone was standing on her porch. She could see the shadow through the frosted glass. Tall, male, not moving, just standing there, waiting. Sharon backed away slowly. Elias clutched to her chest. The back door. She could. Knock, knock, knock. 3 measured strikes on the front door. Then a voice. Low, familiar, devastating. Sharon, it's me. Open the door. Sung-ho, the man she'd loved. The man who'd abandoned her. The man whose server had just been used to threaten her life. And he was standing on her porch at 3 a.m, asking her to let him in. Sharon's hand hovered over the doorknob, her entire body trembling. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to grab Elias and bolt out the back door, to trust nothing and no one, especially not the man who'd left her pregnant and alone. But another part of her, the part that had spent 15 months wondering if she'd been wrong about everything, whispered different advice. Sharon, please. Sung-ho's voice was raw. I know you have no reason to trust me. I know I don't deserve it. But there are people coming, and we don't have time for me to explain through a door. Your people are already here, Sharon said, her voice steadier than she felt. Someone just killed my laptop remotely. Someone's been watching this house. And the threats came from your server, Sung-ho. Your system. Silence. Then, I know. That's why I'm here. Sharon pressed her back against the wall. Elias stirring against her shoulder. Did you send them? No. Did you know about them? Not until tonight. His voice dropped. Sharon, I swear on everything I am, I didn't know you were being threatened. I didn't know about any of this until I traced your location and found Kang's man in the woods. Kang's man? Her blood went cold. Mina's father sent someone. He's offering me a deal. I walk away from you and Elias permanently, and he promises to protect you. I refuse, and Sung Ho's voice cracked, and he stops offering protection. Sharon's mind raced. The inheritance clause, the surveillance, the threats. It all made horrible sense. The Kangs needed Elias gone, but they needed Sung Ho complicit. They were forcing him to choose between his empire and his son. "What did you tell him?" she asked. "I haven't decided yet. Honest. Devastating. That's why I'm here. Because I need you to understand something before I make that choice." "Understand what?" "That 15 months ago, when I left you, I thought I was protecting you." His words came faster now. Urgent. "My father had just died. Rival families were circling. People were dying. I was drowning in blood and violence, and I couldn't drag you into that. I thought walking away was the right thing. The only thing." "You're wrong." Sharon's voice was ice. "The right thing would have been telling me the truth, letting me choose. Not deciding for me like I was a child." "I know." The words were barely audible. "I know that now. But knowing doesn't change what I did. Doesn't change that I wasn't there when you found out you were pregnant. Wasn't there when Elias was born. Wasn't there for any of it." Sharon closed her eyes, fighting tears she refused to shed. "Why are you here, Sung Ho? Really? Is it guilt? Is it because Kang gave you an ultimatum? Or is it because you actually want to be a father?" Long silence. "I don't know," he finally said. "I saw him at the airport for 30 seconds, Sharon. 30 seconds of looking at my son. I don't know how to be a father. I don't know if I'm capable of it. My own father was a monster. What if that's all I know how to be?" Something in Sharon's chest cracked. Not forgiveness, not even close, but understanding. She'd spent 15 months hating him, building walls, convincing herself she was better off alone. But she'd never considered that maybe he'd been just as terrified as she was. "Open the door," Sung Ho said quietly. "Let me see him. Just once, then I'll make my decision. I'll either walk away forever, or I'll burn down everything I've built to keep you both safe. But I need to see him first. I need to know what I'm choosing." Sharon's hand moved to the lock before her brain could override it. She slid the deadbolt back, turned the handle, opened the door just wide enough to see his face. Sung Ho looked wrecked. Dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled, suit rumpled like he'd been wearing it for days. But his eyes, when they met hers, were devastatingly sober. "Thank you," he whispered. Sharon stepped back, letting him in. He moved past her carefully, maintaining distance, respecting boundaries he'd shattered months ago. His gaze locked onto Elias, sleeping peacefully against her shoulder, completely unaware his existence had triggered a war. Sung Ho's face did something complicated. Pain, wonder, regret, all mixed together into an expression Sharon had never seen him wear. "He's perfect," Sung Ho breathed. "He is." Sharon's grip on Elias tightened. "And he deserves better than being a bargaining chip in your family's politics." "I know." Sung Ho reached out, then stopped himself. "Can I?" "No." Sharon's voice was firm. "You don't get to hold him. Not yet. Not until I know you're staying." Sung Ho's hand dropped. "That's fair." "Is it?" Sharon's anger finally broke through. "Because fair would have been you staying 15 months ago. Fair would have been you calling, texting, anything. Fair would have been you fighting for us instead of just disappearing. You're right. Stop agreeing with me." Sharon's voice rose, waking Elias. He whimpered, and she immediately softened, rocking him gently. "Defend yourself. Give me something to hate instead of just standing there taking it." Sung Ho met her eyes. "Would that make it easier?" "Yes." "Then I'm sorry. Because I don't have any defenses. I was wrong. I'm still wrong. And if I walk away tomorrow, I'll be wrong about that too." He stepped back toward the door. "Minna is landing in 90 minutes. Her father's man gave me until sunrise to decide. That's 3 hours from now. What happens at sunrise? Either I sign papers dissolving our engagement and giving up all claims to the Kang merger, or," he stopped. "Or what?" Sung Ho looked at Elias one more time, his expression raw. "Or, they eliminate the complication before the wedding. Clean mathematics, they called it. New hair, new inheritance clause. New problem." Sharon's arms tightened around her son. "They're going to kill him. Not if I walk away. Kang promised protection if I stay out of your lives permanently." "And you believe him?" "No." Sung Ho's laugh was bitter. "But I believe he'll kill Elias if I don't." The weight of it settled between them. Impossible choices, unwinnable games, and a 6-month-old baby caught in the middle. "So what do we do?" Sharon asked quietly. Sung Ho pulled out his phone, stared at the screen for a long moment, then looked up at her with something dangerous in his eyes. We stopped playing their game. Sharon stared at him. What does that mean? Sung-ho moved to the window, peering through the curtains at the dark driveway. The Kangs think they have leverage because they control information. They know where you are. They know about Elias. They think I'll choose my empire over my family because that's what I did before. He turned back to her. They're counting on me being predictable. And you're not? Not anymore. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. Jin is 5 minutes away. He's bringing equipment. We're going to need it. Equipment for what? For disappearing. Sung-ho's expression was grim. The Kangs are tracking my phone, tracking my accounts, tracking every digital footprint I have. But they're not tracking yours. Sharon's mind caught up quickly. Because I don't exist in your world. I never did. Exactly. Sung-ho pocketed his phone. When I left you 15 months ago, I scrubbed every connection between us. Deleted photos, messages, transaction records. I thought I was protecting you from my enemies. Turns out I was protecting you from my allies too. So the Kangs don't know who I really am. Sharon's systems architect brain started connecting pieces. They know I had your baby. They know I'm a threat. But they don't know about my background. What background? Sharon smiled for the first time since the airport. It wasn't a nice smile. Before Elias, I worked in corporate security, financial systems, data encryption, network architecture. I built security systems for companies that didn't want anyone knowing their business. She shifted Elias to her other shoulder. I know how to hide things, Sung-ho. I know how to make people disappear. Something sparked in Sung-ho's eyes. Can you make us disappear? From the Kangs? Maybe. From Minna? Sharon hesitated. She's been tracking me for months. She's good, but I'm better, confident, honest. Sharon moved to her destroyed laptop, pulled out a small flash drive that had been hidden in the battery compartment. I backed up everything I found tonight. The inheritance clause, Minna's surveillance logs, financial records showing the Kang family's illegal operations. Everything. Sung-ho went very still. That's leverage. That's mutually assured destruction. Sharon held up the drive. We release this, and the Kangs go down. But so do you. Your merger, your organization, your entire empire gets exposed. I don't care about the empire. You did yesterday. Yesterday I didn't know I had a son. Sung-ho's voice was steady. Yesterday I thought power was the only thing that mattered. Today I know better. Sharon wanted to believe him. Desperately. But 15 months of abandonment made trust complicated. Words are easy, Sung-ho. What happens when Minna lands? When her father calls? When you have to actually choose? Then I choose you. He said it simply. Both of you. Whatever that costs. Before Sharon could respond, headlights swept across the windows. A car pulled into the driveway. Jin emerged carrying 2 large cases, moving quickly toward the house. Sung-ho opened the door. Jin entered, his expression professionally blank despite the situation. He nodded to Sharon. Miss Williams, you know my name. I know everything about you. Jin set the cases down. Part of the job. No offense intended. All offense taken. Sharon replied, but there was no heat in it. She was too busy watching Sung-ho open the cases. Inside were passports, cash, burner phones, and equipment she recognized immediately. Signal jammers, she said. High grade, military spec. Jin looked impressed. You know your tech. I told you she was good, Sung-ho said, pulling out 3 passports. He handed one to Sharon. Canadian identity, mother traveling with infant son. Backstory is you're visiting family in Vancouver. Sharon opened the passport. Her photo stared back at her, but the name was different. Sarah Chen. How did you get my photo? Security camera from your apartment building. Jin pulled out a tablet. I hope you don't mind. We needed it for the documents. Sharon should have been angry, should have been terrified that Sung-ho's people had been watching her. But right now, fake passports meant escape, and escape meant Elias stayed alive. What about you? She asked Sung-ho. He held up his own passport. Dead businessman. Lee Sung-ho dies tonight in a car accident on the way back to Seoul. Very tragic. Closed casket funeral. Sharon's breath caught. You're faking your death. Only way to break free. Sung-ho looked at Jin. Can you sell it? Already in motion. Jin pulled up footage on his tablet. Your car, currently being driven by someone roughly your build, will go off a cliff in approximately 30 minutes. Vehicle fire will make identification difficult. DNA samples from your medical records have been compromised. The body they'll find won't be you, but the paperwork will say it is. And Minna? will be very upset to learn her fiancé died hours before the wedding. Jin's expression was carefully neutral. Tragic timing. Sharon processed this. If you're dead, the merger collapses. Completely. Sung-ho's smile was sharp. No groom, no heir, no inheritance clause. The Kangs get nothing. They'll know you faked it. Eventually. But by then we'll be gone. He looked at her seriously. This only works if you trust me, Sharon. If you get on a plane with me tonight and disappear. New identities. New lives. No empire. No organization. Just us. Just us. Sharon repeated. You're asking me to run. To hide. To raise Elias in witness protection, basically. I'm asking you to live. Sung-ho stepped closer. Whatever that looks like. Whatever you need it to look like. I'm done choosing power over people. I'm done being my father's son. He glanced at Elias. I want to be his father instead. If you'll let me. Sharon looked at the man in front of her. The man who'd left her. The man who was offering to die to save her. The man who was finally choosing them. It still wasn't forgiveness. Wasn't even close. But it was a start. Where would we go? She asked quietly. Anywhere you want. I want somewhere he can grow up normal. Somewhere safe. Then that's where we'll go. Sung-ho held her gaze. I'll follow your lead, Sharon. This is your choice now. Not mine. Jin cleared his throat. We have 40 minutes before Mina lands. If we're doing this, we need to move. Sharon looked at Elias, sleeping peacefully through the conversation that was reshaping his entire future. Then she looked at the flash drive in her hand. The evidence that could destroy the Kangs. The insurance policy that might keep them alive. She made her decision. We're doing this. But first, I need to send an email. Jin handed Sharon a clean laptop. Untraceable. Routed through 17 proxy servers. Whatever you're sending, they won't be able to track it back to this location. Sharon sat down, Elias still against her shoulder, and pulled up a secure email client. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Sung-ho watched over her shoulder, reading as she typed. To Kang Jae-sung subject, business proposal. Mr. Kang, by the time you read this, Lee Sung-ho will be dead. Tragic accident. I'm sure you'll be devastated. I'm writing to inform you that I have detailed records of every illegal transaction your family has made in the past 3 years. Money laundering, political bribes, weapons trafficking. I also have your daughter's surveillance logs showing she's been tracking me for months, including plans to eliminate my son. This information is currently stored in 3 separate locations with 3 separate attorneys who have instructions to release everything to international authorities if I miss a single weekly check-in call. I'm not interested in destroying you, Mr. Kang. I'm interested in living peacefully with my son. So here's my proposal. You forget I exist. You forget Elias exists. You never look for us, never track us, never acknowledge we were ever part of your world. In exchange, your secrets stay buried. If you agree, delete this email and move on with your life. If you refuse, well, I hope you like prison food. Respectfully. A concerned mother. Sharon hit send before she could second-guess herself. The email disappeared into the digital ether. Sung-ho was quiet for a long moment. That's either genius or suicide. It's insurance. Sharon closed the laptop. The Kangs respect power. This shows them I have it. Do you actually have attorneys with the files? Sharon smiled. I do now. I set up automated dead man switches 3 hours ago when I first traced the threats. If I don't enter a password every week, the files automatically release to 5 different law enforcement agencies across 3 continents. Jin actually looked impressed. You did that tonight? While managing a baby? Babies sleep sometimes. I multitask well. Sharon stood, adjusting Elias. Now we run? Now we run. Sung-ho grabbed 2 of the bags Jin had brought. Private airstrip 20 minutes from here. Plane leaves in 45 minutes. We'll be in Canada before Mina even realizes I'm gone. They moved quickly, loading the rental car with essentials. Sharon secured Elias in his car seat while Sung-ho and Jin did a final sweep of the house, wiping down surfaces, eliminating evidence. Jin approached Sharon as she was buckling in. For what it's worth, he's different around you. I've worked for him for 4 years. I've never seen him walk away from power before. He walked away from me once, Sharon replied quietly. That was different. He thought he was protecting you. Jin glanced toward the house where Sung-ho was finishing up. This time, he's protecting himself from becoming his father. That's harder. Before Sharon could respond, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she opened the text. Clever email. But you made one mistake. You assumed I'm the only threat. Attached was a photo. Recent. Crystal clear. Jin's face, standing next to Sung Ho in what looked like a private meeting. But in the background, barely visible, was someone Sharon recognized from her research earlier. Kang Jae-sung. The timestamp showed the photo was taken 6 days ago. Sharon's blood turned to ice. She looked up at Jin, who was now walking back toward the car, his expression pleasant and helpful, exactly like it had been all night. "Jin," she said carefully, "when did you start working for Sung Ho?" 4 years ago, he smiled. "Why? And before that?" Jin's smile didn't waver. "Does it matter?" Sung Ho emerged from the house, locked the door, and jogged toward the car. He slid into the driver's seat, unaware of the tension. "Ready?" Sharon looked at Jin, at the man who'd brought fake passports and escape plans, at the man who'd been standing in a room with Kang Jae-sung 6 days ago, while supposedly being Sung Ho's loyal lieutenant. Twist #6. Jin was working for the Kangs. He'd been the inside man all along. Every move Sung Ho made, every plan, every location, Jin had been feeding it all to Minna's father, which meant their escape plan wasn't an escape at all. It was a trap. Sharon's hand moved slowly toward the door handle. "Actually, I forgot something inside. Baby formula. Jin's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt. Hard enough to stop her. His smile never faltered. "I packed formula, Miss Williams. 3 days worth. You don't need to go back inside." Sung Ho noticed the grip. Jin let her go. Of course, Jin released her immediately, holding up his hands in mock surrender. Just being helpful, but Sharon had seen it. The flash of something cold behind his eyes. The way his other hand had moved toward his jacket, where she'd bet everything he was carrying a weapon. They weren't going to make it to the airstrip. They weren't going to make it out of the driveway. Sung Ho started the engine, still oblivious. Jin climbed into the front passenger seat. Sharon sat in the back, Elias sleeping beside her, her mind racing through possibilities. She could tell Sung Ho could expose Jin right here, right now. But Jin was armed. They were sitting in a car. Elias was within arm's reach. One wrong move and her son died. So Sharon said nothing, just texted with one hand while keeping her phone low, out of Jin's sightline. She pulled up the email account she'd just used, sent another message, this one to a different recipient. Someone she'd hoped she'd never have to contact again. Emergency extraction needed. Jeju Island, current location compromised. Target, 1 adult female, 1 infant male. Threat level, extreme. Authorization code, Blackbird protocol. She hit send, then deleted the message from her phone. No evidence, no trail. The recipient would get it, would understand, would move. If they arrived in time, Sung Ho pulled out of the driveway, heading toward the airstrip, toward whatever Jin had planned. Sharon's hand rested on Elias's car seat, ready to grab him and run at the first opportunity. Jin turned in his seat, looking back at her with that same pleasant smile. "Nervous, Miss Williams?" "Terrified," Sharon admitted honestly, "but probably not for the reasons you think." His smile widened, and Sharon realized with horrifying clarity that he knew she'd figured it out, and he didn't care. Because whatever was waiting at that airstrip, Jin was confident they wouldn't survive it. The car drove through the dark Jeju roads, carrying 3 adults, 1 baby, and enough secrets to kill them all. Sharon's phone buzzed silently in her pocket. 1 word reply. Incoming. The airstrip appeared ahead, a single runway carved into dark fields. No lights, no tower, just empty space, and a small plane waiting at the far end. Too convenient, Sharon thought. Too perfect. Sung Ho parked near the runway. "Jin, do a perimeter check before we board." "Already done remotely." Jin pulled out his tablet. "All clear. Do it again. In person." Sung Ho's voice carried an edge Sharon hadn't heard before. "I don't take chances with my family." Jin hesitated. Just a fraction of a second, but Sharon saw it. So did Sung Ho. "Is there a problem?" Sung Ho asked quietly. "No problem." Jin opened his door. "I'll check the plane." He walked toward the aircraft, his silhouette disappearing into shadow. Sung Ho immediately turned to Sharon. "Tell me what's wrong." Sharon's heart hammered. "How did you? You've been tense since we got in the car. You're watching Jin like he's a threat." Sung Ho's eyes were sharp. "What did I miss?" Sharon pulled out her phone, showed him the photo. This was taken 6 days ago. Jin and Kang Jae-sung, together. Sung Ho's face went pale, then red, then absolutely cold. He's been feeding them information. Everything. Our location, our plans, this escape. Sharon gripped Elias tighter. "We're not escaping, Sung Ho. We're walking into an ambush. Sung Ho's hand moved to his waistband, checking for the weapon Sharon knew he carried. How long have you known? 5 minutes. I couldn't tell you with him in the car. Smart. Sung Ho looked toward the plane where Jin had disappeared. We need to move. Now. Back to the car. Drive in the opposite. Headlights flooded the airstrip. 3 vehicles, coming from different directions, boxing them in. Black SUVs with tinted windows. Professional. Coordinated. The trap had sprung. Sung Ho's hand found Sharon's. Stay behind me. The SUVs stopped. Doors opened. Men emerged. 6 of them. All armed. All wearing the kind of suits that said money and violence in equal measure. And from the center vehicle, stepping out with calculated grace, was Min-ah. She wore white. Always white. Like she was pure instead of poison. Her heels clicked against the runway as she approached, and her smile was the coldest thing Sharon had ever seen. Sung Ho. Min-ah's voice was silk over steel. Running away on our wedding day? How rude. There's not going to be a wedding. Sung Ho positioned himself between Min-ah and Sharon. I'm done, Min-ah. Done with your family. Done with the merger. Done with all of it. You don't get to be done. Min-ah gestured, and her men raised their weapons, not pointing yet. Just ready. You signed contracts, made commitments. You belong to my family now. I belong to myself. No, Min-ah's smile widened. You belong to whoever holds the most leverage, and right now that's me. Her eyes shifted to Sharon. Hello, Sharon. I'd say it's nice to meet you, but we both know I've been watching you for months. I know. Sharon's voice was steady despite her fear. I found your surveillance logs. Very thorough. I'm thorough about threats. Min-ah's expression hardened. And you, with that child, are the biggest threat to my family's plans. Then you received my email. I did. Very clever. Very bold. Min-ah stepped closer. But you made one critical error. You assumed my father cares about prison. Men like him don't go to prison, Sharon. They make prosecutors disappear. They buy judges. They rewrite history. She paused. Your insurance policy is worthless. Sharon's stomach dropped. She'd been wrong. She'd gambled everything on the Kangs valuing their freedom over revenge. She'd lost. Jin emerged from the plane, walking calmly back toward the group. He didn't look at Sung Ho, didn't apologize, just took his position beside Min-ah like he'd always belonged there. 4 years, Sung Ho said quietly. 4 years you stood beside me. I trusted you, and I was paid very well for that trust. Jin's expression was neutral. Nothing personal, boss. Just business. Everything's personal. Sung Ho's hand tightened on his weapon, especially betrayal. Then you understand why this has to end here. Min-ah nodded to her men. Kill them. Make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Tourist and her baby, tragic victims. The body in that car crash will be Lee Sung Ho. No loose ends. The men raised their weapons. Sharon pulled Elias closer, her body curving around him protectively. This was it. She'd run out of moves, run out of plans, run out of time. Sung Ho stepped forward, blocking the line of fire. You want them? Go through me first. Gladly, Min-ah said. Then the night exploded with light. Helicopters, 3 of them, appeared from nowhere. Spotlights flooded the airstrip, bright enough to blind. The sound was deafening, rotors churning air into chaos. Men rappelled down, fast and professional. Not Korean. American. Military gear, unmarked uniforms, moving with the kind of precision that spoke of serious training. Twist hash height. Sharon's emergency contact wasn't just backup. It was a full tactical extraction team. They hit the ground and immediately secured the perimeter. Weapons trained on Min-ah's men. Outgunned. Outmaneuvered. Over in 30 seconds. A woman emerged from the lead helicopter. 40-something, sharp-eyed, carrying authority like a weapon. She walked straight to Sharon. Miss Williams, or should I say, Agent Williams. Sharon's face was carefully blank. Former agent. Sung Ho's head whipped around. Agent? CIA. The woman confirmed. Sharon Williams worked Financial Crimes Division for 6 years before she resigned 18 months ago. Right around the time she met you, Mr. Lee. The woman's smile was thin. We've been watching this situation develop with great interest. Min-ah's confidence finally cracked. You can't. We can. We are. The woman pulled out a tablet, showed it to Min-ah. Thanks to Miss Williams's files, we have everything we need to dismantle your father's entire operation. International trafficking, money laundering, political corruption across 4 countries. Congratulations, Miss Kang. You're all going to prison. Sharon looked at Sung Ho. saw the betrayal and confusion warring on his face. I was undercover, investigating Korean organized crime. Then I met you, and everything got complicated. How complicated? His voice was hollow. I fell in love with my target. Sharon's eyes filled with tears. I was supposed to gather evidence and disappear. Instead, I got pregnant, and you left first. I resigned from the agency because I couldn't do the job anymore, couldn't betray you. But I kept the contacts. Just in case you needed to burn me. Just in case I needed to save our son. Sharon held Elias up. I chose him, Sung-ho. I chose us. Even if it meant exposing everything. The CIA woman cleared her throat. Mr. Lee, you have two options. Cooperate with our investigation, provide testimony against the Kang family, and we'll consider witness protection. Or refuse and face charges yourself. Sung-ho looked at Sharon. At Elias. At the life he'd built and the life he'd destroyed. At 15 months of mistakes and 3 hours of choices. I cooperate. Full testimony, whatever you need. He stepped closer to Sharon. But they stay safe, protected. That's non-negotiable. Agreed. The woman gestured to her team. Get them on the helicopter. We leave in 2 minutes. Sharon grabbed Sung-ho's hand as they moved toward the aircraft. I'm sorry. I should have told you. You should have. His grip tightened. But you chose us when it mattered. That's more than I did. They climbed into the helicopter. Elias waking now, crying at the noise. Below, Minna and Jin were being restrained, their empire crumbling. As the helicopter lifted off, Sharon watched the airstrip disappear below. The trap, the betrayal, the violence they'd barely escaped. Sung-ho's arm wrapped around her shoulders. What happens now? Now we disappear for real. New lives, new names, just the three of us. Will you forgive me? Eventually? Sharon looked at him. Really looked at him. The man who'd left her. The man who'd come back. The man who'd chosen their son over everything he'd built. Ask me again in a year. When you've proven you can stay. Sung-ho nodded, pressed a kiss to Elias's forehead. I can stay. The helicopter banked east, carrying them toward sunrise and second chances, and a future none of them could have predicted. Behind them, the island burned with flashing lights and fallen empires. Ahead was only uncertainty. But for the first time in 15 months, Sharon felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Hope? The house in Vancouver was small, nothing like the glass towers and luxury Sung-ho had once commanded. But the backyard had a swing set, and Elias's laughter filled the space in ways marble floors and expensive art never had. Sharon watched from the kitchen window as Sung-ho pushed their son on the swing. Elias was 18 months old now, talking in broken sentences, calling Sung-ho Dada with absolute certainty. It hadn't been easy. The first months in witness protection had been tense. Therapy sessions, difficult conversations. Nights when Sharon couldn't sleep, couldn't trust, couldn't forget that he'd left once before. But Sung-ho had stayed. Through Elias's first steps, through teething and tantrums and 3 a.m. fevers, through Sharon's nightmares about Minna and what could have happened, through his own guilt and grief for the life he'd burned down, he'd stayed. The Kang family had fallen spectacularly. Kang Jae-sung was serving 40 years. Minna had taken a plea deal, 25 years minimum. Jin had disappeared into witness protection of his own, trading testimony for freedom. And Lee Sung-ho had died in that car crash, officially and completely. The man pushing the swing was David Chen now. Software consultant, boring, normal, alive. Sung-ho looked up, caught Sharon watching, and smiled. Not the dangerous smile of a mafia boss, just the tired, grateful smile of a father who'd been given a second chance. He walked toward the house, Elias bouncing in his arms. Someone needs a nap. Someone needs 2 naps, Sharon replied, taking their son. You look exhausted. Worth it. Sung-ho kissed Elias's forehead, then looked at Sharon. Can I ask you something? Always. A year ago, I asked if you'd forgive me. You said to ask again when I'd proven I could stay. He took her hand. So I'm asking, have I proven it? Sharon looked at this man who'd given up everything. His name, his empire, his entire identity. All to be a father. All to earn back what he'd thrown away. She thought about forgiveness. How it wasn't one moment but 1,000 small moments. Diaper changes and bedtime stories and showing up every single day, even when it was hard. You're getting there, she said softly. Then smiled. Ask me again next year. Sung-ho laughed, pulled her close, and kissed her. Not desperate, not passionate, just steady, sure, real. Elias squirmed between them, giggling. Dada, Mama, their family. Imperfect, Complicated, hard-won, but theirs. He burned an empire to build a home. She risked everything to save their son. And together, they proved that some loves don't just survive, they transform. This was the story of the mafia boss who learned that power means nothing without someone to share it with. And the woman who showed him that true strength isn't holding on, it's knowing when to let go. If this story grabbed your heart and refused to let go, show some love. Hit that like button. Subscribe to Ruthless Romance Tales for more stories that'll wreck you in the best way. And drop a comment telling me what you thought. Did you see those twists coming? Did Sung-ho earn his redemption? Let me know. And if you're craving more dark romance with characters who fight for love instead of just falling into it, stick around. Because we're just getting started. Until next time, remember, the most dangerous love stories aren't the ones that burn fast. They're the ones that refuse to die.